Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Deputy Access Level training session. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Felix, and I'm a Customer Success Manager here at Deputy, and I'm also joined again by my colleague Sam today. Today, we're going to deep dive into the access levels within your Deputy account. Specifically, what we're going to cover is the differences between our default access levels that we have within Deputy, how the permission structure works. We're also going to show you how to work with custom access levels if they're needed in your account. And then we're going to share some general time-saving tips and tricks as usual with you. And also, as usual, at the end, we're going to run a Q&A session. But you can also ask your questions, as with the previous sessions, throughout the training. And here's how. Please make sure that you don't use the chat function at the bottom of this window. Please make sure you actually use the Q&A section because we can't monitor the chat for this. So if you have a question, just click on that Q&A button at the right bottom side of your Zoom window. And there you can type in your questions. We will not be able to, or we will most likely not be able to answer all of those questions in this training. So, and therefore we will actually share a recording with all answered questions afterwards. Cool. And with that said, I'm going to give off to my colleague Sam for today's training. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our last training session of the year. If this is your first training session with us, welcome. If you've joined us in the past, thank you so much for all of your attendance and participation in the Q&A throughout the year. We've really appreciated it. But before we get started into the topic, we'll just do a quick run through of what Deputy is. Here are some of the industries on the left that we've served. This year, we've had a lot of success with healthcare. And we also work with hospitality and education and such. And some of the brands on the right are some of them, like that yummy Messina gelato that we all enjoy as well. What we'll do is, again, we'll just kind of run through what the features are. So we've got some scheduling, timesheets, and exporting to payroll platforms, integrations with point of sale systems and inward input as well, team communication, and also, of course, because we're cloud-based, we've been able to work with a ton more products as well. So again, the topic today is access levels. So we'll be jumping in and out of a few instances of a Deputy account today, but it will still be the same Deputy account. And so what we'll do is we'll jump out of the presentation. And what we'll do is before jumping into the account, we're going to be using this as a really good template of what we want to go through today, because these are our access levels that we have. All the premium accounts have this built in at the moment. And what we'll start with today is with what it looks like to log in as an employee, because our attendees today will typically be a location manager or a system administrator. But I think to get a really good understanding of setting up and assigning these user and access levels, it's really good to see what it's like to log in as an employee or supervisor. So we will cover all of them today, and then we'll work our way up. So what I'll do is I'll actually share this article for everyone after the presentation as well, just so everyone's got a copy of this, because on the left-hand side, you'll see these are all of the main fundamental features of Deputy that you get access to. So this tick box is a really good visual cue to know, okay, I need to set up this employee. What do I need them to have access to? And then that will help you decide what to assign them. So without further ado, we'll just jump in. We're going to log in as an employee. Now, what we've been able to see is just like everyone who will log into an account in Deputy is you'll default to your Me tab. So as you can see, it's giving me a quick update of some shifts that are up and coming. It's letting me know that I'm late for my shift today because I haven't clocked in. But also other things such as applying for leave in my profile and stuff like that. It's all relevant for an employee just as much as it is for a system administrator. The restrictions and tabs that you'll see at the top of the screen will be limiting your access as an employee to things like reporting and stuff like that, everything that we already explored just here. But most importantly, you'll be able to see the newsfeed as an employee. So we've got some updates that we can see here and respond to and comment on. And as an employee, my access to these newsfeed updates will be based on the people who are broadcasting the newsfeed updates. They get to select the locations and areas that are getting sent these messages. So, for example, setting up an employee, it doesn't give them access to every single newsfeed post. The person who's broadcasting is going to dictate who gets to see it. Next are the tasks. So employees, as well as all the way up to system administrators, if they're assigned tasks, they'll get access in it, not only on the desktop version, but also the mobile version. With locations, this is limited for an employee to just see basically the location name and the address. But obviously, as soon as we start to get into the location manager and above, you'll be able to do things like either edit a location or add a brand new location. Then lastly, the most important thing is if the up and coming shifts from the Me tab is not enough information, they can go to the schedule and have a look at all of the areas that they're assigned to within a location. So as an employee, I've been assigned my place of work, which is Sydney, but obviously there's Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, all these other cities and locations in this account. But because I, as an employee, have been assigned this particular location, this is the visibility that I'm limited to. I can also see my coworkers and my coworkers' shifts. Now, controlling this is not universal. This is actually done by managing the location settings. So, for example, if you switch off the ability for employees to see each other's shifts, then by clicking on the schedule, it will just have myself here and just my shifts. I won't be able to see anyone else's. But for the purpose of this particular test account that I set up, I've allowed visibility because it's trying to reflect the kind of business culture where I want people to swap shifts, and it's really open and fluid and flexible. So that's kind of what you see here. But obviously, again, if you turn on those restrictions, it's not done in the access levels. It's done so in the location settings, just so you know. Okay, so we've just covered the employee. Obviously, the employee access level is limiting, and as designed, it's just pretty much for managing tasks and viewing your shifts. That's really what you want to do, and that's what we see. So what we'll do is we're going to log out and we're going to jump in as a supervisor. Okay, so the supervisor, I mean, the first thing that you've probably noticed, obviously we've got the Me tab, it's looking pretty the same, but most importantly, you'll be able to see at the top of the screen that instead of just shutting you off after the schedule, you can see the timesheets. And now the timesheets that are going to be seen for this particular login that I've set up, as you can see, it's limiting me to the location that I, as a supervisor, have been assigned to. So you'll see that I'm not getting access to approving timesheets and seeing the visibility of pay conditions and things like that for any other location other than the one that's been assigned to me as a supervisor. Because the intention of setting that up was that I am just approving the timesheets for the employees that I'm supervising. So here I get to approve their timesheets and go ahead and verify that. And so if we just have a quick look here, we'll see that the kind of things that we've been able to add on is that the approval of timesheets is there. And you'll see that we've got a notation there indicating that it's not just giving the supervisor access to approving timesheets for everyone, it's just the employees that they're supervising. Another important note is that now that I've got access to the schedule as well, I can then add shifts. So if you remember when we were logged in as the employee, we didn't have the ability to, it was more of a just read only. There's no ability to add shifts, but now as a supervisor, I do have scheduling access. So I can go ahead and add a shift. So the day dictates that I need to be able to add some shifts based on availability and such. So I can do that as a supervisor. So tack on extra shifts and then publish. Easy peasy. Other than that, the other things that you want to be looking out for when trying to determine if I'm going to need to give this person supervisor access as opposed to an employee access is just the kind of things, if they need to be adding information into the journal, if they need to be approving leave. So if you have a process where this particular person that you're setting up is going to have people submitting leave requests to them, then yes, you probably want to give them supervisor access. That's going to be important. Otherwise, they're just going to have to default to another person, another location manager or supervisor for those employees to submit leave requests to. Cool. All right. So what we'll do is we'll jump out and we're going to jump in as a location manager this time. Fantastic. Okay. So you'll see again, now that we're in the location manager, we've got two new main, very obvious features. The first one is not only do we have access to approving of timesheets, but we can also export them as well, such as, supervisors have been approving timesheets. As a location manager, I might jump in and have a look at those timesheets, but they're already approved, so I don't need to do anything with it, but I do want to export them. As a location manager, I can pick up on these timesheets and export them to Xero, to MYB, to ADP, to whichever exporting payroll provider that I need it to go to. All those options there, once I'm a location manager, I do have access to that. Another very, very important feature that you've probably seen at the top of the screen here is that I've got access to the reports. For those of you who attended our reporting training session that we did a few months back, thank you. Anyone interested, we can send off the recording to it, but essentially we cover in depth what all of these reports do. It is an on-off feature. So if you need an employee of yours to have access to reports, it is going to be location manager or system administrator. There's no ability to just have a supervisor with the more limited access also have access to the reports. It's a bit of an on-off feature. Some of the other things that are evident in the location manager access level, we've covered exporting timesheets, the report access, but it's also the ability to edit locations. We alluded to that at the start of the session. So if we go to the locations over here, you'll see that as an employee, we could only see the name of the location and of course the address. But now as a location manager, I can edit settings. If I edit settings, we can do things that we covered in our account setup training session, which is edit the trading hours. We can edit the area behaviors and things like that. But something that's relevant to what I showed you earlier was the ability for employees to see each other's shifts. That's in the scheduling tab. So if you want employees, when they log in, to only see their shifts, that's in the scheduling settings. Whereas my current settings are set up so employees can, as an employee, you can see each other's shifts if you need to be flexible and communicate any shift swapping and stuff like that. That allows for it. Some of the other location manager settings here, just also the adding of an employee. So this is a really good segue into actually assigning an access level. So obviously, when you're a location manager and above, you can actually assign and make decisions as to what access level certain users are going to have. So if we go to the people tab here, we can either change a access level of supervisors and employees that are assigned to us. We can change their access level, but obviously I won't be able to change other location managers' access levels. So if we go to well, that's a system administrator, so I'm definitely not going to be able to change change his access. But if I go to here and we go to edit profile and we go to job information, we can see from this drop-down menu here that we can change their access level. So if we need to upgrade an employee access to supervisor access, Once we hit save, this particular user will have to log out and then back in again in order to see their new features. So, for example, if we've upgraded someone from an employee to a supervisor, they'll have to log out and back in for them to be able to start scheduling employees in, approving timesheets, approving leave availability, and things like that, as well as accessing the journal. Cool. Another important thing to know how to do is not only edit employees, is to also add a new employee now that I've got this access. So we can just breeze past here. We assign the location. But once we go to job information, again, this is going to be our decision-making process. Usually during the induction process, you probably hired them based on their JD. You're going to be able to decide if they just need employee access, supervisor access, or location manager access. But as a location manager, I cannot obviously assign a system administrator. Only a system administrator can do such a thing, which is a great segue into the next user access level. So if we go back over here, you'll see that there's not much of a difference between a location manager and system administrator. Based on this feature matrix here with all the tick boxes, you'll see that it's basically just saying the ability to create a location. So again, when I was logged in and I go to locations, by just doing edit settings, like I'm only able to edit the information, the settings, and the behaviors of this location, but I'm not able to add an extra location. Also, as this location manager, I'm only assigned to Sydney. But what you'll see is when I log out and then I log back in as a system administrator, you're going to see a lot of different information. Oh, the security. 1 second, everyone. And we're back. Hey everyone, this is a quick little public service announcement. Everybody use authenticators, it helps. All right, so now that we're back in the locations, you'll see that instead of seeing as a location manager, just the Sydney location that I was assigned to, as a system administrator, I can see everything. So again, that's another key decision process is as you're setting up your people, if you need them to have access to everything, then a system administrator is going to be very well suited for that access level. Obviously, that's not limited to just seeing all the locations. It's obviously seeing everything to do the account. So this is seeing all the people and their information. This is having complete access to the schedule to not just the location, like that Sydney location that we saw before. If we click this drop-down menu, a system administrator is going to be able to see all locations, which is immense. And obviously they're probably not going to have rostering requirements for all of those locations, but it's a visibility piece typically, because usually you'll have location managers and supervisors actually doing the rostering. And obviously the most important part, which is the approval and exporting of timesheets. As a system administrator, just like a location manager, you've got access to both. However, a system administrator is going to have the ability to see all of the locations by default, their timesheets, and also export timesheets from all of those locations by default. Lastly, the reporting is exactly the same as well as a location manager. The only thing is if you're going to generate a report that is querying like other locations, then obviously a location manager, it will be limited to report querying of the locations that they're assigned to. So if we go back, I'll quickly show you what that looks like. When we're setting up a location manager like this one here that I was logged in as before, if we go to edit profile and then go to job information, actually, no, pardon me, works at. So by default, we've got them set up on Sydney here, but as the initial invitation. But if we find that this location manager actually needs access to all those other features that we suggested, but for visibility purposes for Adelaide and for Brisbane and whatnot, then we get to add those in there. So it's not just a process of, okay, well, this location manager needs to see other locations. So you don't have to give them system administrator access. You can just add the locations that you want them to have visibility of in terms of editing the settings, doing rostering activities, exporting and approving timesheets, interacting with employees for newsfeed purposes, for leave approval processes, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to then assign this person as a system administrator. You can just add the locations that they're assigned to. So that's going to be a key thing to keep in mind when you're going through that decision-making process, and how to kind of how to really approach it. Now that basically sums up all of the access levels that are pre-built into your account. Another thing to understand is that there might be some situations where you do need some customizations, some slight customizations to how some of these settings and tick boxes and access levels are behaving or interacting with each other. We can't really say straight out of the box that we can do it. There's a lot of tick boxes here that are dependencies on others. For example, if you need, there's one here which is view employee costs. So if you have this unticked, but you also have them access to reports, then they kind of like counteract each other, because if you have access to reports, then it gives you access to all the reports. So you'll be able to then see costing through the reporting, even though you wanted view employee costs to be unticked. So this is just a kind of a conversation that we usually have for accounts and clients of ours that request customizations to the access levels. We kind of go through this process. So it's not just a simple matter of telling us how you want the ticks to work. We will have to kind of catch up one-on-one on each case-by-case scenario to make sure that we are customizing these access levels per request, and also to make sure that it's not going to be counterintuitive or contentious with other features. So for those instances, please just reach out to our support team. We'll start the conversation, either open up the chat bot, send us an email, get in touch with our CSMs. Either way, we'll be able to kind of work through those custom requests to make sure that we can actually do what you're asking for. But more often than not, it might not be a tick box that you need. It might just be a naming convention that you also need changed as well. Again, just get in touch with our support team and we'll be able to help you out through there. What that leaves me with is just a quick little recap of what we covered today. We covered the defaults. We went through the permission structures of who reports to who and kind of that sequence of events. And then lastly, we went through the custom access levels as well as the general time-saving tips about how to set up an employee, check what location they work at, decide on the actual access level that you're assigning them, and then sending off your invitation. So what we are going to do next is quickly chat about the next steps. Again, as I alluded to, this is the last training session of this year. Big thank you to everyone who's made it and who's participated in the Q&A. The next topic we're still deciding on. We're kind of feeling that we probably do return to leave management. It's a bit of a hot topic time of the year to do that kind of stuff, but it could be another one which we'll ask you to give us feedback in with polling. We have recorded today's session as well as the Q&A. The recording of the Q&A is also very important as well, because a lot of people ask really great questions in that section, which we're about to get to. The recording of it, it does say within 24 hours. We will endeavor to do it, but definitely the Q&A and the answers to the Q&A might take us a little bit longer, but we will endeavor to get that to you as soon as possible. What we'll do is we'll kick off the Q&A and we'll have a return of Felix.
And I need to unmute myself. There we go.
Welcome back.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, everyone. So this was a little bit of a shorter demonstration, and we did get a few awesome questions in. So thanks a lot for sending those through. I did try my best to answer all of them already in the chat. But we will address quite a few now as well, and you can keep asking. I will have a look at this Q&A section while we go through this now. Oh, now they're all coming in. Perfect. Cool. I think because a few questions were regarding this, what we maybe should show first of all, Sam, could we go to our help portal for two reasons? First of all, I wanted to show if we just click on the sort of the logo and go to the main page. So for all of those people that were asking about previous webinars or questions that were asked regarding topics from previous webinars, when I said in there, that was answered already in our leave management webinar or something like that. If you just go to help.deputy.com, this is literally where we're right now, and then the first little section here at the top where it says Learning Center, if you click on that, that will show you all the topics that Sam and I have done this year, pretty much since we started this in chronological order. So the latest one at the top, and then if you go down, you see all those topics. So when I was referring to any of those, you will find them here. Perfect. Cool. I think that usually answers quite a bit. Then I think if we can have a look at the access level article, basically. Cool. So a lot of questions that came in were regarding supervisors. So, or actually, I suppose the difference between supervisors and location managers. So a lot of questions were about pay rates. Certain people don't want their location managers to see pay rates or their supervisor to be able to see wage costs, but not reports and those kind of things. Correct. Oh, you're logged in there, Sam, as a
yeah. So I'm currently logged in as a system administrator. So if I go to Sydney, I set up a roster earlier, and you'll see that for the people there, like as a system administrator, as expected, we can see pay rates, right, based on the hours that we've clocked in there, which is nice. Same thing with the stats and stuff like that as well. But as a supervisor, if we go log out.
And actually, while you do that, because I do see quite a few questions regarding the recording. So two things: we are recording this, like all of them, and we will post them in exactly this link that we just showed you before. So you will see that in there. Just give us a few days to answer all the questions, and then it will be posted in there. And we will also send out an email with a link to our learning center. So to answer that, yes, everyone will get that recording. And even if you don't, for whatever reason, if it's in your spam folder or something, you can go to that help article, to the learning center, and there you find all the recordings. Just to say that again, because there's quite a few questions coming in. Cool.
Awesome. So yeah, so with supervisor, you'll see that you've got view employee costs. That's unticked. Now, if we go back to the schedule, I'm logged in as a supervisor, and instead of seeing hours and then the wages and the costing associated with them, you'll see that it's just limited to hours. Ta-da! So that's kind of answers that question. So supervisors are not really concerned with costing. It's really just about same thing with the timesheets as well. They're not going to be able to deduce costing based on the timesheets. Timesheets are really just about measuring hours and attendance and things like that. You're not going to be able to determine the pay and the pay history and all that kind of stuff by having a supervisor approving timesheets. Obviously, that's what makes a big difference between a location manager and a supervisor. A location manager, when you go to exporting timesheets, sure, you can start to deduce pay rates and things like that. But also, a location manager will see. Pardon me, if I go back to schedule, you'll see that this has got the hours, and then it's got a dash, or and then it will actually have the pay rates associated with it. So again, to visually show you that fundamental difference, I'm going to quickly log back out and log back in as a location manager.
Perfect.
Do you see that? Perfect.
Cool.
So yeah, that's that fundamental difference. That's pretty much how this tick box is behaving. in the user accesses.
Correct.
Cool.
And while we're at that, there was a question: can a supervisor in the same area approve another supervisor's timesheets in the same area? And the article is actually perfect for that, because if you look at the supervisor and approve timesheets, so it says underneath it employees only. So I think usually what I in the sessions that I have with customers, two things that I always mention, because it's not that obvious when you look at it. So first of all, it is for the timesheets and also for leave. And two things here are important. If you're a supervisor, you can only approve downstream in the hierarchy, meaning you can only approve for employees. You can't approve for yourself, and you can't approve for other supervisors. Whereas a location manager or a system administrator, they can do that. They can approve downstream, but also for other location managers. If they are, and this is where it gets complicated, if they are both assigned to the same location, if you have one location manager for only one location, or say you have 7 locations and you have 7 different location managers that are only assigned to their individual location, then they can't approve each other. So they do need to be assigned to the same location. Anything to add there, Sam? Anything I forgot?
Nailed it. Yeah, that's great.
Cool. Then we have, can a supervisor add new staff members? Also, does the supervisor level see individual staff salaries and personal details? So the answer is no. They don't have that box ticked, so they can't add or edit employees, and they can also not see employee costs. Again, it was mentioned already in the presentation, but do say it again. So if someone of you needs a access level that is basically like a supervisor, but with a few more permissions, we do have the ability to create custom access levels in your account. And as Sam mentioned, we can even name them in the way that you like. So we can call them, venue manager or whatever it needs to be called in your business. However, there are a few things like the employee cost, for example. If we would tick that box, there's quite a few other ones that automatically get ticked. So they will then have access to reports, or they will see the wage cost in the schedule, et cetera, et cetera. So some things are tied, like in the permission structure, some things are tied to others. Specifically when it comes around cost, basically think about it in a way, if you turn the costs on in one area, and it doesn't really matter which area it is, you actually turn them on everywhere. So if you want to see your supervisors to see the daily costs in your schedule, but you don't want them to see individual staff costs, that is not possible, because you would turn this on, which means it would turn that on everywhere, including in the reports, including in their individual staff profiles.
Some of them
kind of
like,
black and white.
Yeah. And some of them are like hard coded. So like by ticking this, it will automatically tick the dependency. Or sometimes it's like more, even if it doesn't hard code ticket by default, it's something that they have to go looking for it, but they can figure it out. So for example, let's just say that view employee costs doesn't automatically access to reports. So you've got this unticked, but that ticked. You can still go and use the reporting to figure out the costing, as opposed to seeing it in the schedule, like so obviously. So again, this is why all of our custom permissions and access levels requests do go through with the support, because our support team asks the right questions about making sure that we kind of get it right, because obviously the margin of error is pretty dire. It's very less than ideal. So we kind of want to get it right the first time. And that's why we don't really have like an interface for a system administrator to play around with access and permissions, because it's very easy to make the wrong decision. So just get in touch with our support team. We'll ask away the right questions.
Perfect. Another one was, are employees able to see approved leave on the schedule for other staff members as well as themselves? So I don't know if you want to go back to the article, maybe, Anne. So employees, especially when it comes to leave and timesheets, can only see their own. They can't see the leave or the timesheets from other staff members. You can turn on, or you can give them the option in the location settings to see each other's schedules, which is important if you, for example, want staff members to be able to swap shifts. So that is possible, but not for timesheets or leave. You're only able to see, yeah, Sam is actually showing this right now. So correct. Those and the tiny one above where it says allow employees to view each other's schedule. That is something you can restrict. Either you say allow all, that means they can see themselves and all the staff members they work with, or you say you only allow them to see today's schedule, which means they can see obviously their own, but they can also see everyone that they're working with today, but not for the future. Or you block that completely and they can literally only see their own shifts. But that has an impact then on the settings above. If you block the visibility completely, let's say, you obviously can't allow employees to swap shifts because they can't see who they need to swap with, etc. Who's available, who's not. Cool. Then we have, is it possible to have managers, for example, location managers or supervisors, be able to approve timesheets and see the total wage costs, but without being able to see individual salaries? I think we kind of answered this before. So this question is a bit tricky because if we're only talking about salaried staff members, the simple answer is no, we can't do that. But you could technically create a separate location. There's actually a few workarounds. You could create a separate location for only the staff members on a salary. However, if you don't want those staff members to see each other's schedules and they're all location managers, then you would have created another location with the same problem. The only option then really is to not show salaries in deputy account. Right, Sam? Or is another workaround that I
usually setting up separate locations is what people do for that kind of workaround. But again, reporting is very you just got to make sure that tricky. You're managing the locations that you're assigning to location managers. That's the kind of the control mechanism in that workaround.
Correct. And that actually ties quite well with a few other questions that sort of went in the same direction. So if you have, let's say, a location with, say, 8 areas or something like that, and you do want supervisors or location managers, any of those access levels, you want to restrict them for only certain areas, say only 4 areas out of those 8 within a single location. The only real way to do that is to create a separate location. So if you turn this one location with 8 areas into, let's say, 2 locations with 4 each, then you can achieve that. But as Sam said already, then you would have in the reporting or when you're exporting, etc., those would be then 2 separate locations, and they might be in reality a single physical location, if that makes sense. So the issue with access levels is that if you have any of those access levels and you are attached to a location, right? So meaning you are a location manager and you are attached to a location, you have that right within the whole location. We can't restrict it within one location. The only way to restrict it is to attach you to only certain locations. Say if you have 10 and we only attach someone to 5 of those. That's the only way of really restricting it.
And that can be kind of counterintuitive to how you want the supervisors and employees to be interacting with the locations in terms of schedule visibility and the intuitiveness of that visually. Like doing that for the location managers might make it really hard visually for the supervisors to then start rostering people. So you just kind of decide on the path of least resistance about deciding on which route you want to take.
Correct. And again, I know we said it already twice, but I think in that case, if you work with this help page that we're just sharing here, which is I think visually quite good and showing you what each access level can do, and then if there's any limitations that you think in your account and that something that doesn't work for you, please reach out to our support and let them know which permissions you require to be added for, let's say, a supervisor or something, and they can walk you through if that is possible and what implications that has. Again, if we are turning the cost on at one place, we might turn it on at 7 other places as well, and you might not want that. So, yeah, please.
What you could do as well is, because we like our customers to be able to do as much testing as they can possibly do, and so you could do something similar to what I did, which is I've got one email address, but what I did is I just invited myself using a plus prefix for each of my email addresses to invite myself to this Tony's Flowers account as a employee, as a supervisor, as a location manager, as well as being default by my normal login as system administrator. And this allows me to vigorously test the use cases, the scenarios that I want to test, like do a bit of stress testing to make sure that when I finally go ahead and invite an employee, it's behaving exactly the way I wanted it to, rather than just kind of sending out employees and waiting for them to give us feedback. Please advise that this will contribute to your user count. So it's really good to do this kind of invitation of yourself and log in when before you've invited the other employees, so you're not kind of going over your expected user count limit and that in turn get bill shock. So, but that's a really good way to test. If you want to test it yourself, just invite yourself as each of those employee types, and that's the best way to do it. But obviously, feel free to reach out to our support team and ask us a bunch of questions as well, or watch this recording.
Correct. Cool. Another question was, can I change the permissions within an existing default access level from Deputy? So you have two things. As a user yourself, you can't do that, but you can reach out to us. What we will do, if you go back to the access level sheet quickly, Sam. Yep. So what we'll do, if you, let's say, you want to change the supervisor the access level. So for example, you want to give them access to add and edit employees. So just one more tick box that is currently there, right? What we would do is duplicate that supervisor access level, because we would not, mess around with an existing one. So we would duplicate that, would either call it supervisor 2 or something to your liking, and then would add that little tick box, basically. And again, as mentioned before, this might have, depending on what you want added, that might have implications, specifically pay rates. That is usually the topic that's very tricky. But yeah, so again, in this case as well, please reach out to our support team, let them know, and we can actually do that in the backend of your account. Another thing I do think we need to mention, because it is before Christmas, so if all of these people watching this webinar right now, if you all reach out at the same time, there will be a bit of a backlog. They are very busy currently at the support, and please give them a little time to if something like that needs to be done in your account, to actually do that. Cool. Is there a way of allowing supervisors or managers to only add shifts to roster but not publish those shifts? That's a very good question. So if you have access to the schedule, if you are able to create shifts and rosters or edit shifts, etc., you are able to publish them. So they are interlinked, those two things. That is one permission, and the permission is access to the schedule, which would actually also allow you to publish them. So we can't sort of give a part permission here where we give you access, but not access to publish. Then there's actually quite a few questions that came in. Yeah. Let's have a look. So we answered this one. How do we disable employees being able to edit their own clock-ins? Now, this is actually not a question regarding the access levels, but you can do that under the location settings. So in location settings, you will have that question came from Marvin. How do you disable employees editing their own plugins? So under the timesheet settings on the left side here, I think it's the 5th one, right? Or the 6th, one more down. Yeah, allow employee, it's the one underneath here. Allow employees to modify their own timesheets, which is currently turned on. It is linked to the one above, allow submitting ad hoc timesheets. So if you allow that, you will actually have the modify one on. But yeah, if you turn that off, they will be not able anymore to do that. The ad hoc timesheet, by the way, means if someone say they haven't worked yesterday and they come in today and they can just say, oh, I've worked 8 hours yesterday. That's submitting an ad hoc timesheet, which is the setting above. How can you only give access to administrators only seeing wages? Okay, so this is a tricky question. System administrators can obviously see and do everything within the deputy account, right? One option to do this is to not have any location managers. So if you have one or multiple system administrators, the people who are allowed to see those wages, right? And then you just don't have any location managers and you straight go to supervisors and employees. In that case, you would actually only have system administrators that can see those wages. Just be aware, though, that if you're looking at this, a supervisor, for example, can only approve the time component of timesheets. Same as for leave, by the way. So if someone submits a timesheet for 8 hours that they worked yesterday, the supervisor can only approve those 8 hours, not the amount of money that costs, which means that a location manager, or in this case, system administrator, has to double check and approve that timesheet before you export it to payroll. Very important point if we're skipping the location manager access level.
Also means, yeah, you could only system administrators can actually export timesheets.
Good point.
Which
yes.
could create a pretty contentious bottleneck when it comes to that person going on a holiday or something like that.
Correct. So in this case, I guess the best tip is make sure that you have at least 2 system administrators to sort of share that workload, because otherwise you would create a bottleneck for yourself, because you will be the only person. If you look at all those permissions, you will be the only person who can do those things if you only have one system administrator.
Yeah, but a big kind of point to consider when you're thinking about location managers and system administrators, less so with employees and supervisors, is contingency. What kind of fallback do you have when you start to limit who gets access to what, and all the submissions of leave requests and timesheets and things? Where are they going to? What contingency do I have in place about the kind of people that I've assigned these user access levels?
Correct. Then we have a few questions actually that are good. So can I disable leave? I don't want employees to submit leave in Deputy. For this one, we don't have to show this now, Sam, but have a look at our leave management recording. And in the Learning Center, we explained it in there really well. There's a button in the general settings for each leave type that you can actually make it not visible for employees to answer that. Then we have a question regarding how access level link to notifications, which is a good one actually. Should we go to the location settings, Sam? Quickly just show that sort of. If we go to scheduling, I think it is usually right. Well, actually, this is probably there's 2 parts to this. So under notifications and integrations, we can actually turn on and off or edit the individual notifications. So because it doesn't say that in the question, depending on what notification we're talking about, right? But I think if I understand this correctly, the person is asking how the access levels link with the notifications, meaning how can I make sure, that a location manager gets the notifications or something like that. And that is in scheduling. If we go to, it's kind of in the middle, right, Sam? Shift notification, where is it?
Yeah.
Yes, there it is, perfect. So in here, it will give you those options. So by default, it would say best fit. Then we also have the schedule creator, the scheduling manager of the location, or the scheduling manager of the location and working. Now, what do these mean? Usually, I would suggest to leave it at best fit, because there's an algorithm behind it that goes through this list and finds the best person within your organization, usually. Now, if there are any issues and you're saying, that the wrong person is getting the notifications or something, you can change this here. Now, the schedule creator, and I know this might be a little confusing because they are not named after access levels, right? So they don't say location manager or supervisor, etc. The reason for that is that in depending on your business, the person creating the schedule could be a supervisor, it could be a location manager, it could be a system administrator. You might be a cafe with only one system administrator and 8 employees, and that person is doing all of that, right? Therefore, we needed to change the wording. So in here, the schedule creator, obviously the person that created that schedule, which usually is which would be the person that will get those notifications, right? Then we have the scheduling manager of that location. So if you have, say, a location with a lot of areas, and within those areas, you have individual managers that create those schedules, but at the end of the week, there's one person publishing that roster for everyone. Right? Could be a location manager, etc. In that case, it would go to this person, not the individual person that created that schedule in that area. And then the last one, for possibly even bigger organizations, if you have multiple of those people, it would go through that list and find that scheduling manager of that location that is currently working. Meaning, if you have 4 of these people and today, little Jimmy is late for work, and you need to make sure that that notification goes to that person that is also working today, not at home, etc. And last option is best fit, where our algorithm decides that for you, which is usually what we would suggest. Anything to add there, Sam?
No, that's great. Whoever asked that question, that was amazing.
That's a good question. It's a really
covered that earlier.
it's actually when I read that, I was like, yeah, that's a really good question, and it kind of plays into this actually as well. Cool. Then we had there's a few questions. Can you tell us how to delete archived employees? I don't think we should. I mean, we can quickly. So usually we wouldn't suggest actually to delete archived employees. You can use the filter option and go to status and change that to archived. Then you can see all your archived staff members, and there you can delete them. Right. However, you don't get charged for archived employees. And if you delete an employee, 2 things. First of all, you do need to do that manually per employee. And second, you would lose all their historical data, all of it. So we usually suggest against it. And again, we also don't charge you for archived employees. So there's no real reason, I suppose, to actually delete them. But if you want to, this is a way of doing it. Cool. Amazing. So again, a few more questions about the recording. Yes, so everyone will get an email. And again, if you want to find those training sessions that we did, please go to our help portal, help.deputy.com. And the first article there is the Learning Center, where you find all previous ones, including this one, once we have released it, which will be usually in, a couple of days, sometimes a little longer, depending on the question. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, before we do the poll, I just wanted to quickly show, now that we're in filters, you can filter by the access level as well. So if you just want to show the employees' access levels, there you go. As you can see, I can just show my supervisors, my location managers, and probably way more system administrators. And oh no, that's not too bad. And yeah, so that's how you can use the filters and how the access levels interact with it.
And maybe what we also should show, which I suppose we haven't mentioned at all yet, if you reached out to our support, or you had a training session with one of us or someone else at Deputy, and we have created a custom access level for you, the place where you can find that is wherever you see the access level. So you can filter it here. As you see, the custom access level is in there as well. We actually did some good prep yesterday and named it custom access level. And if you want to go to Chris or to Sam, and we just quickly show them how they can actually see the one, change the access level and find the custom one as well.
Oh, so, yeah, of course.
Usually if we go to edit profile, job information, and then it will literally show up in that list. So there's no special place if you have a custom one or something. It is literally just in that list of access levels. And if you have multiple, they will show up in here. Cool. So yes, I hope that helped. There's still probably a few questions. I'm just having a look now that haven't been answered yet. We will again answer all of them later on, and then we'll publish that, and you will find it in the Learning Center on our help portal, and you will also get an email from us as soon as we're done. Cool. With the entry and close, we have a little poll where we ask you how you liked today's session, and also, if it was, was it too basic, was it too complicated, etc. So please answer this, as this really helps us to adjust those, and also any suggestions for future topics. With that said, we might leave this on for another minute or two, so that everyone that wants to submit a wants to partake in this poll, please feel free to do so. And with that, have a nice rest of the day. Have a great rest of the year. Actually, this is our last one for this year. So see you guys in 2021. And yeah, thanks for joining today. It's really fun.
Thanks, everyone.